to develop a super technologies that were known to the alien race before the great Earth cataclysms. And this is one of the reasons, not the only reason, but it's one of the reasons why man's scientific and technological expertise has outrun any of his more spiritual and moral levels of development. It's not that technology in itself is a bad thing, it's just that it's been pushed. There's been an artificial hand moving it artificially forward through history to the point where we now have this basically concrete and steel existence, and now we're even ready to head into even darker areas of this technology. Mind control is going on all the time. They're now working very closely to have this interactive television, what they call immersive television, the various virtual realities, the various brain implants, sophisticated ones, in which people are able to sort of plug into each other's consciousness in some sort of collective hive type of way with a central computer. A lot of these things they're madly working towards, because none of them have any individual strength. None of them have a concept of individuality or independence in the true meaning of those words. In fact, quite the reverse. They hate it, they despise it, and therefore they are looking to make, you talk about them wiping out physically people. That has been on their agenda. As I said, they're psychopaths, so that has always been one thing. They loathe the human race, so it's no surprise that they have done that. But more importantly, they want to be able to mechanize and completely dumb down and control the human race, and have them under mental control, remote control. That would even serve them, better than even wiping them out. Although, of course, they're not adverse to doing that.
From your research of, we talk about the massive amounts of bloodshed that they're into, and they have no empathy with human people. I've always believed that the elite are into occultism and blood sacrifice and murder of innocents because they actually believe it gives them power. I have an open mind, and I never dismiss anything out of hand. But I mean, aren't the elite nothing more than delusional psychopaths themselves? Is that their weakness? Is that the chink in their armor that good people can lash open?
Yes, partly all criminals make mistakes. So in the tightening up and the kind of more draconian methodologies that they're using today, their plan backfires, because now you got an Alex Jones, love him or like him. Well, he's a product of the kind of draconian machinations that these people do, and therefore you'll have people like myself, so this is again can backfire, or people's frustration levels, go higher. Let's always address the fact that there is a fraternity structure that these people have to conform to. As they matriculate through it, they will be compromised. So the psychopathy isn't sometimes just there from the start. It will be also a slow indoctrination process in which these individuals may start off as quote-unquote good men, but then through the Masonic fraternities that they have to join, these Rosicrucian orders, and again, the pursuit of knowledge. I have chapters on this in the Irish Origins book about the promise, and the promise of occult knowledge, the promise of all around the next corner, attain the next degree. You'll have more insight, more power. There's something about the human mind, you see, that has always fallen prey to this particular lure. And so by the time you've got so far on, what's actually been happening is that your moral sensibilities have been slowly eroded, and your power hunger and your inhumanity has been bolstered. They know we have an alien gene, and they know how to work on it as well. They do a bloody good job at it. So there's also that acculturation. Cathy O'Brien's and all have said this, that they will be compromised because these leaders, their sexual peccadillos will be analyzed. They may be put into these orgies, and then these orgies are filmed.
And the stuff keeps all the photos, and they have them where they want them.
Yeah, this has been whistleblown in many movies. For instance, the movie Hidden Agenda, which is about Ireland, and many others as well. They'll be compromised. They think they're just going for some sort of Dionysian party, okay, whatever. But then, unfortunately, this will be hanging over their heads. And then the next step is towards pedophilia and other things. Part of that is ritualistic. Other parts of it are from the ancient Eleusinian myths. A lot of these people are actually still, as I say, ideologically identify with these bona fide Dionysian cults. This is what one of the last talks I did on throughout Europe, in Europe, was based on, exposing these Dionysian cults. Other times it's not that you're a member of it; it's just that you've fallen prey, and then they want to compromise you.
You mentioned Dionysus there, did you?
Yeah, it's a blanket term to represent the sort of Eleusinian orgiastic Saturnian cults that once existed in proliferation throughout the world and which many elites belong to. I've always believed that these cults are still going because I recognize their symbolism. I started when I was 13 years of age and studying the subliminal symbolism in videos, rock and pop videos, and also in magazines and newspapers and billboards and so on, and eventually came to the conclusion that this is a archive. It's not just spasmodic, it's not just unrelated. The symbols that they're using actually come out of a specific occult tradition that I gave the term cult of Dionysus to. Jordan Maxwell prefers to call it the Saturnian cult. There's all sorts of different...
the cult of Saturn there.
Yeah, there's all sorts of different cults.
For example, that's one example. Have their robes and their wigs and things. It's cult of Saturn, how they dress.
Right.
The legal system.
Yeah, and people who whistle-blown this, for instance, Stanley Kubrick, you see, and others, you know, suddenly they meet with these strange deaths and what have you. This cult is very operating in the world. It's very, very powerful. One can argue that it's maybe not the highest, but that's kind of a mute argument. The fact is they're very, very powerful. And they have their own specific hallmarks. They actually, these people, like all criminals, they have a modus operandi. They have a certain pattern of symbolism. Pattern recognition is very important. I've had pattern recognition since I was a child, so I was able to very much see that it's not just a big, crazy pastiche of various occult symbols. There's threads. That's how I came onto the existence of the atomists. That's how my work also confirmed the existence of the Illuminati and the Black Venetians, and then more importantly, the cult of Dionysus. This specific kind of symbolism that involves the blonde female, the symbols of the butter.
Hello. We may have lost Michael Tsarion there for a second. Let's see if we can get him back. Well, let's take a music break and see if we can get Michael back. Welcome back to the Free Truth Show on TNS Radio. I'm your host, Patrick Lynch, and we have with us Michael Tsarion. Michael, you speak of using your mind and having positive intentions when you send out thoughts in the world. Well, that's important. And my question is, and then we'll move on to the callers' questions, the people in the chat box. When people raise themselves up, when they do raise themselves up from the illusory system of monetary control and debt and tax-ridden scams and global warming, and reassert their sovereignty and take responsibility for their own flesh and blood and grow their own food and just get as much off the slave system control grid as possible, what then happens? How much energy is sailing out across the ether? Do you believe that makes a sizable dent in the controller's armor?
Well, yes, because the moment that people work on this other stuff that I advocate about strengthening their own immune system and doing it in whatever way they feel, and I don't mean just physical immune system, I mean their whole psychic immune system, that will immediately change the dynamic. I've said that many times, that in fact they want you to be running around messing about in politics and social change because they run that shop. They control the traffic lights. They control the entire, you know, they are the impresarios. And so you're obviously not going to get anywhere, or you're going to be compromised, or you may do a couple of good things here, but then, you know, 10 other things bad happen somewhere else. So the thing that they want to always be making sure doesn't happen is that you don't understand that it's a war on consciousness and that it's your psychic temperament that needs to be looked at. And they're doing a beautiful job. So until people deal with their inner house, you know, they're not going to really affect the greater change. And there will be no change. And then the sorcerers will always be in control in one shape or another. There has been times in which you have pretty much benevolent dictatorships. But, you know, dictatorship is dictatorship. Whether the chains are gold or iron, they're still chains. So it's an individual movement. But people then have to discover the other dynamic, that it is, in fact, a struggle, a tug of war between the many and the one, the collective and the individual, and the dependencies that exist between that. If people are going to continually give up their own sovereignty to be able to be acculturated to the mass movement, then they're no better in the way than the greater tyrants who just happen to have more physical or, you know, political control. Actually, the dynamic is the same.